I think my uncle might be a serial killer. The why? For the last 40 years, I've lived in a house with no mirrors, in a hollow that doesn't show up on any GPS map, waiting for the world to forget what my uncle did. If you're looking for a story about a monster in a flannel shirt, you won't find it here. The rumors about David were half true, twisted by panic in the dark of the Appalachians, but they missed the rot at the center. People in this county called him the Hollow Killer. They said he took hikers off the trail. They said he took drifters who parked too long at the gas station on Route 9. They said he buried bodies in the limestone caves behind the old sawmill. My mother called him a drunk. My father called him a shame. I called him Uncle David, and I watched him do things that made my blood turn to ice and my soul turn to stone. I was a rookie MT when the truth started bleeding into my life. I thought David was a serial killer. I thought he was hunting people. It took me 3 years to realize David wasn't killing anyone. He was processing them. He was taking the things that had already taken people, or the things that were trying to wear people like suits, and he was swallowing the horror so the rest of us could sleep. The NDA I signed expires when I die, but the truth shouldn't. The files were burned in a Quonset hut in Nevada in '98. The bodies were incinerated in a furnace that runs on diesel and prayer, and the witnesses were paid off or buried in unmarked graves. But I'm James. I was the driver. I was the witness. I was the one who held the flashlight when David cut the impossible out of the world. I'm telling this now because David is gone, and the lock he held on the door is loosening, and because I think my niece Tara is starting to hear the hum. Before we go back to 1994, I need to ask something. If you value the stories that don't make the nightly news, if you want to keep this channel alive so the whispers don't fade, hit that subscribe button. If you can spare a few dollars, the coffee tip jar helps me keep the lights on and the hard drive spinning, but mostly, just listen. What I'm about to tell you isn't fiction, it's a confession. And if you've ever felt something watching you from the tree line, you might already know part of this. The story begins in the spring of 1994. I was 22, fresh out of training, driving the ambulance for the rural district that covered the northern hollows of West Virginia. We didn't get many calls. Mostly it was falls off tractors, heart attacks in old miners, and the occasional drunk who fell in the creek. But on April 12th, the dispatch came in from the Miller farm, deep in the black timber off County Road 44. The caller was a woman named Teresa, her voice shaking so hard the radio operator could barely hear her. She said her husband had gone into the barn to check the livestock and hadn't come back. She said she heard wet tearing sounds and a voice that sounded like her husband, but wrong, like he was speaking through a throat full of gravel. I pulled up to the barn with the siren off. The rain was coming down in sheets, turning the dirt road to slurry. The barn was a rotting Quonset structure, the metal ribs rusted through. Teresa was standing by the truck, clutching a shotgun, her knuckles white. "James," she whispered, "don't go in there." "Ma'am, I need to see." "He's already in there," she hissed, "and he's not my husband anymore." That's when I saw the truck, David's truck, an old Ford F-150 with the mud flaps hanging off and a license plate that had been filed down to just the numbers. It was parked nose first into the barn, blocking the large sliding door. David was sitting on the bumper, smoking a cigarette. He was wearing his work coat, the one with the oil stains, and a pair of rubber gloves that looked too clean for the mud around him. David looked up at me. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired. "Get the ambulance back, James," David said. His voice was low, flat. "Nobody goes in there." "Uncle David," I said, stepping out of the cab. "Teresa says her husband is in there. I have to check." David stood up. He was a big man, broad shoulders, but he moved with a strange economy, like he was conserving energy. He walked toward me, and I noticed something that made my stomach drop. His gloves were stained black, not with mud, but with a viscous, iridescent fluid that seemed to shift color in the lightning flashes. "Your husband is dead, James," David said. "The thing wearing him is in the hayloft. If you open that door, it comes out. It's hungry, and it doesn't know you." "I'm an MT," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't care what it is. I have to." David reached out and grabbed my arm. His grip was iron, but his skin was cold, not cool. Cold, like he'd been standing in a freezer for hours. I looked at his face, really looked at it. His eyes were dilated, the pupils swallowing the iris, and for a second, I thought I saw a reflection in them that wasn't the rain. It was a geometry, angles that shouldn't exist, shifting like a kaleidoscope. "Listen to me," David said, leaning close. "You are part of this now. You saw the truck. You saw me. If you go in there, you die. If you call it in, the men in the black suits come, and they burn the farm, and they burn you, and they burn me. You understand? You drive the ambulance away. You tell Teresa her husband fell in the creek. You lie. You lie to save her soul." I wanted to run. I wanted to call for backup, but David's hand was still on my arm, and the cold was spreading up my sleeve, freezing the muscle. And then I heard it, from inside the barn, a sound, not a roar, not a growl. It was a mimicry. It was the sound of Teresa's voice, but stretched, distorted, looping a phrase over and over. "James is here. James is here. James is here." It was learning. It was trying to use me. I dropped the radio. I got back in the ambulance. I drove away. I told Teresa her husband was in the creek. I told her we'd search tomorrow. I watched David turn the truck around, reverse it into the barn, and lock the door from the outside. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the wall, waiting for David to come home. He did. He walked in at 3 a.m., soaked in rain, his gloves gone, his hands wrapped in bandages that were already bleeding through. He didn't say a word. He just poured himself a glass of whiskey, drank it in one gulp, and went to the shower. When I checked the bandages the next morning, they weren't stained with blood. They were stained with that same iridescent black fluid, and when I asked him what happened, he just looked at me and said, "You did good, James. You kept the secret. Now you're a keeper." David didn't explain it that night. He didn't explain it for weeks, but the pattern emerged. David wasn't just a man living in the hollow. He was a filter. Over the next month, I saw him respond to calls I didn't know about. He'd show up at the scene of an accident before I did. He'd take patients to the back of his truck, not to the hospital. He'd bring them to the old sawmill, which David claimed was his storage. I thought he was a serial killer. I watched him haul bodies into the woods. I saw him dig holes. I saw him bury things wrapped in oilcloth. The town whispered. The sheriff, a man named Matlock, started asking questions. Matlock was a bad man, a man who took bribes and looked the other way, but even he was rattled by David. One evening, David came to my house. My wife Kathy had just gone to bed. David sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten pancakes as a kid. He looked older now, his hair graying at the temples, his face lined with a fatigue that sleep couldn't fix. "James," he said, "I need you to understand what I'm doing. You think I'm killing people. You're wrong. I'm saving them, and I'm killing the things that are inside them." He pulled a notebook from his coat. It was a ledger, handwritten, dates, names, locations. But next to the names, he wrote things like Phase 4 Shifter, Fungal Carrier, Echo Entity. "Project Willowbank," David said. "That's what they called it when I was young, a government program. They found something in the ice in '78, something that wasn't biological. It was a code, a pattern that could rewrite flesh. They tried to weaponize it. They failed. The subjects, they didn't die. They became vessels. They started spreading it. The infection isn't a virus, James. It's a signal. It travels through proximity. It changes the DNA. It makes people hollow. It makes them carriers for things that don't have bodies." David pointed to the ledger. "My uncle was a subject. My father was a subject. I'm a subject, but I'm different. I'm a sink. My body can absorb the signal without becoming a carrier. I can take the infection out of people, or I can take the entities out of the hosts, and I can hold them. I can burn them off, but it costs me. Every extraction, every containment, it eats at me. It changes me." He rolled up his sleeve. His arm was scarred, not with knife wounds, but with geometric burns, patterns that looked like circuitry etched into the flesh. "I'm not a serial killer, James. I'm a janitor for a world that doesn't know it's dirty, and I need you. I can't do it alone. I need a driver. I need a witness. I need someone who can lie to the sheriff, who can forge the death certificates, who can keep the town from panic. If the town knows, the panic spreads the signal faster. Fear is a conduit." I looked at him. I saw the man who used to teach me to fish. I saw the man who was slowly turning into something else. I thought about Kathy. I thought about my life. "If I do this," I said, "I can never go back. I can never be normal." "You're already not normal, James," David said softly. "You saw the thing in the barn. You heard it mimic you. You're marked. You're part of the network now. The choice is just how deep you go." I signed the papers, not the government ones. I never saw those. I signed a paper in David's ledger. I wrote my name under James Miller, Keeper, Level 2. That was the entanglement. I became David's shadow. I drove the truck. I carried the burn bags. I buried the victims in the caves. But David showed me that the victims were already gone, their minds wiped, their bodies occupied by the entities. David would extract the entity, seal it in a lead-lined box and bury it deep, or in the worst cases, he'd use a device I didn't understand, a handheld emitter that hummed at a frequency that made my teeth ache, to dissolve the entity on the spot. The town called David the Hollow Killer because he disappeared people. They didn't know he was erasing the parasites that had replaced them. They didn't know that the bodies he buried were often empty shells, or worse, pupae waiting to hatch. The years blurred. The routine became a life. By the autumn of '96, the workload increased. We called it the bloom. It seemed like the signal was waking up. David would come back from extractions with blood pouring from his nose, his eyes bleeding black tears. He needed rest. He needed me to take over the calls. I started going to the scenes alone. I learned to recognize the signs. A patient with skin that was too cold. A patient with a heartbeat that stuttered, 3 beats instead of 2. A patient whose shadow didn't match their movement. I learned to use the emitter. I learned to seal the burn bags. I learned to forge the paperwork. I became a ghost in the system, creating deaths for people who were already dead, covering up the impossible. Kathy left me in October of '96. She said I was distant. She said I smelled like ozone and rot. She said I came home at 3 a.m. with blood on my hands and wouldn't tell her where it came from. She took the kids and moved to Charleston. I didn't stop her. David was right. If I explained, the panic would spread. If I tried to keep her, the signal might jump to her. I sacrificed my marriage to keep the hollow quiet. In March of '99, Matlock the sheriff got too close. Matlock had found a ledger page in David's trash. He knew David was burying things. He suspected something worse than murder. He started investigating. David called me to the sawmill. He looked terrible. His hair was falling out in patches. His skin was translucent in places, revealing a dark, shifting mass beneath. Matlock is going to the caves, David said. He thinks he'll find bodies. He'll find the boxes. He'll open one. If he opens a box, the entity escapes. It takes him. Then it takes the town. Then it spreads. What do we do? I asked. We have to stop him, but we can't kill him. If he dies, his family investigates. If he's taken, we can use him. We can extract the entity before it fully bonds. David gave me the emitter. He gave me a set of keys. He told me to follow Matlock. I drove to the caves. Matlock was there with 2 deputies. They were prying open a box marked Project Snowfield S. Classified, the box was humming. The sound was inside my skull, a drilling pressure. Matlock, I shouted. Step back. Matlock turned, his face pale, his eyes wide. James, what are you doing here? Get back, I yelled. The box is compromised. One of the deputies reached in. His hand touched the contents. He screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was a sound of tearing metal. His body contorted, his limbs bending at impossible angles. The entity was bonding. I activated the emitter. The hum spiked. The deputy convulsed, then collapsed, his body going limp. The entity was dissolved. But the feedback hit me. My nose bled. My vision went white. I fell to my knees. Matlock stared at me, terrified. What did you do? Call it a seizure, I gasped. Call it a heart attack. Get him to the hospital. Tell them he had a stroke. If you talk about this, you die. Matlock looked at the deputy, then at me. He saw the blood on my face, the strange device in my hand. He saw the fear in my eyes. He was a bad man, but he was a survivor. He nodded. He got in his truck. He drove the deputy away. That night, David and I sat in the kitchen. David was shaking. He poured 3 glasses of whiskey and drank them all. You did good, David whispered. You saved the county. Matlock won't talk. He's too scared. He'll drink himself to death, but he won't talk. David was changing faster now. The sink was filling up. I could see the strain in his bones. He was holding too much. In October of 2003, a new crisis hit. We called it the echo wave. It wasn't one entity. It was a signal cascade. People in neighboring counties started reporting glitches. They saw people walking wrong. They heard voices in the static of their radios. They found animals with too many joints. David was deteriorating. He could barely stand. He needed me to drive him to the extraction sites. We were moving constantly, a nomadic war against the signal. We slept in motels, in the back of the truck, in the caves. I aged 10 years in those 5 years. I lost my weight. I lost my hair. I lost my connection to the world. I met a woman named Nikki in 2004. She was a journalist from the state capitol, sniffing around the rumors of the Hollow Killer. She tracked me down. She thought she had a story. She thought David was a murderer. She came to the sawmill. She had a recorder. She had a camera. She confronted David. David looked at her. He didn't attack her. He just looked at her with those kaleidoscope eyes. You want the truth? David asked. Yes, Nikki said. People are disappearing. Some people are disappearing, David said, because they were already gone. The things inside them need to be removed. I remove them. I take the burden. I carry the rot so you don't have to feel it. Nikki didn't believe him. She thought he was crazy. She thought he was confessing. She tried to leave, but as she walked out, the signal hit her. I saw it. Her shadow detached from her feet. Her eyes flickered. The entity was trying to jump to her through proximity, through the curiosity, through the fear. I activated the emitter. Nikki collapsed. I dragged her to the truck. I took her to the safe house. I spent 3 days extracting the entity from her. It was a hard fight. The entity was smart. It tried to mimic David's voice to confuse me. It tried to use Nikki's memories against me. When I was done, Nikki was alive. She was hollowed out, but she was human. She didn't remember the extraction. She remembered waking up in a hospital with a headache and a story she couldn't finish. She wrote an article about the Hollow Killer, but it was vague, dismissed as a conspiracy theory. She never came back. I realized then that the world was fragile. The signal was everywhere. David was the only thing holding the dam, and David was breaking. In August of 2008, the government came. Not the local suits, the real ones. Men in tactical gear, no insignia, moving with precision. They called themselves Blue Corridor. They knew about David. They knew about the sink. They surrounded the sawmill. David was in the back room, hooked up to a machine I didn't recognize, a life support rig that was pumping a dark fluid into his veins. David, one of the men said. His name was Matlock? No, a different Matlock. A handler. We're here to take custody of the asset. David laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound. I'm not an asset. I'm a containment unit. You take me, you release the load. You'll kill millions. Protocol dictates extraction, the handler said. We have the suppressors. We can stabilize you. David looked at me. James. The keys. The cave. The final box. I understood. David was going to trigger a lockdown. He was going to seal the hollow, bury the entities, and burn the evidence. Run, David said. Take the truck. Go to the safe house. Wait for me. The handler raised a weapon. It wasn't a gun. It was a pulse emitter, high frequency. David lunged. He moved with supernatural speed, his body shifting, his arms elongating, the skin hardening like chitin. He was using the stored entities to power himself, a desperate gambit. He took the handler down. He took 2 others, but the third shot hit David in the chest. The pulse disrupted his biology. David screamed, a sound that shattered the windows. He collapsed. I ran. I got the truck. I drove to the cave. I buried the final box. I sealed the entrance. I waited. I waited for 3 days. David didn't come. In December of 2012, I found David. He was in the sawmill. He was alive, but barely. The pulse had damaged his core. He was in a coma-like state, his body cycling through phases, sometimes human, sometimes something else. I cared for him. I fed him the dark fluid. I kept the emitter charged. I sat by his side for months. I watched him fight. I watched him hold the load. One night, David woke up. He looked at me. His eyes were clear, just eyes, for the first time in years. James, he said, I'm dying. The sink is full. I can't hold it anymore. I'll take it, I said. I'll take the load. David shook his head. You're not a sink, James. You're a keeper. You can carry the knowledge. You can carry the burden of the lie, but you can't carry the rot. If you take the load, you become a carrier. You become the vector. I've kept you safe. I've kept you clean. He reached into his chest, pulling out a small vial. It glowed with that iridescent light. This is the key, David said. It's the code to the lock. It's the frequency to the signal. If I die, the lock opens. The entities will spread. You have to use the key to reset the network. You have to find a new sink. You have to find someone who can take the load. David handed me the vial. He touched my forehead. A flash of images. A network of keepers. Hundreds of us. Across the country. In the cities. In the rural hollows. We didn't talk. We didn't meet. We just held the line. We buried the boxes. We burned the bodies. We lied to the world. There are hundreds of us, David whispered. We don't talk, but we know. And now, you know. David died 2 days later. His body didn't rot. It crystallized. It turned into a statue of dark glass. I buried him in the cave, next to the final box. I sealed the entrance with concrete and lead. I performed the ceremony. I burned the ledger. I burned the files. I burned the truck. I stood in the ashes and I felt the weight of the key in my pocket. I felt the hum in my head. I felt the loneliness. I was the last keeper in the hollow. I was the only one who knew. By 2019, I was old. My hands shook. My memory was fading. I lived in the safe house, a cabin deep in the timber. I watched the world change. The internet grew. The rumors grew. People started talking about glitches online. They called it the Mandela effect. They called it mass hysteria. They didn't know it was the signal leaking. I knew the lock was weakening. David was gone. The key was in my pocket. I needed a successor. I found her in Tira. She was David's granddaughter. David had a daughter, Susie, who died young. Tira was her child. Tira was a nurse at the county hospital. She was smart. She was curious. I started watching her. I saw the signs. She had a habit of humming when she was stressed. She had a sensitivity to certain frequencies. She had dreams of geometric shapes. She was a potential sink. I approached her. I told her I was her uncle. I told her David was my brother. I told her we had a family history of medical anomalies. I recruited her slowly. I gave her the emitter. I showed her the cave. I told her the truth. Tira was terrified. She wanted to run. But she saw the boxes. She saw the history. She saw the weight I carried. She understood. I'll do it, she said. I'll take the load. I'll be the sink. It was a terrible gift. I watched Tira change. Her skin cooled. Her eyes dilated. Her body began to store the signal. She became the new filter. She started responding to the calls. She became the keeper. I stepped back. I aged. I watched Tira do the work. I watched her save the county. I watched her lie to the world. I watched her carry the rot so the rest of us could sleep. I'm 68 now. Tira is 30. She's holding the line. The network is holding the line. There are hundreds of us. We don't talk. We don't meet. But we know. We know about the signal. We know about the entities. We know about the government programs that failed. We know about the ice in 78. We know about the code that rewrites flesh. David was not a serial killer. David was a hero. He was a martyr. He swallowed the horror so we wouldn't have to. And now Tira is doing the same. I can't prove this. The files are burned. The bodies are ash. The witnesses are silent. If I go public, the panic spreads. If I release the truth, the signal jumps. The world isn't ready. The world is fragile. We have to keep the lie. We have to keep the secret. But I'm tired. My body is failing. The key is fading. I'm passing the torch to Tira. I'm passing the burden to her. If you've seen something you can't explain, if you've heard a hum in the static, if you've seen a shadow that doesn't match, you're not alone. You might be marked. You might be a keeper. You might be a sink. Or you might just be a witness. Don't panic. Don't spread the fear. Fear is a conduit. Keep the secret. Protect the hollow. And if you find a man in a flannel shirt with cold hands in a lead-lined box, don't call the sheriff. Call him uncle. Call him keeper. and listen. I'm James. I was the driver. I was the witness. I was the one who held the flashlight. The NDA expires when I die, but the truth stays in the dark, and the door stays locked.